Now, it's not your fault, it's not mine. This is just the way our brains and bodies were designed for survival, to help us evolve, to help us go find food, the mate, the shelter. But back then it was really hard, right? It took a lot of effort. Right now, you can just do any number of things like swiping left or right, or, going here or there, and you just have instant gratification. And so we're all walking around in some form of addiction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the G-Spot. I'm Gila Zak, certified hypnotherapist, and this is the place where we talk about all sorts of curious and interesting things related to unconscious human behavior and hypnosis. On today's episode, we're going to talk about addiction. And I'm willing to bet that each and every one of you has had addiction touch your life in some way. And by the end of this episode, you're going to see exactly what I mean. And I'm going to introduce not just the causes and the problems associated with it, but solutions, ways in which hypnosis can help you or someone you love break the cycle. Now, what is addiction? Now, this saying is used as hyperbole all the time. I'm addicted to this or I'm addicted to that. And the truth is, maybe not. Real addiction is anything that changes our internal chemistry. It is something that we need more and more of whatever the drug is in order to get that same level of stimulation or high. And then when we come down off of it, there is again a change in chemistry. There is irritation, irritability, insomnia, depression, anxiety, or craving. Certain addictions, those associated with illicit drugs and alcohol, if you were to come down from those too quickly and you were to crash from those without medical intervention or support, those can actually cause stroke, can cause heart attack, and even death. So when we talk about being addicted to something, we can look and see that it's actually a spectrum of things that can cause us to be addicted. So what are these things? Well, we know drugs. Drugs are highly addictive because, well, they make us feel good. And the truth is that each and every one of us have our own scale of how addictive things can be. Now, some things can be more addictive for some people and less addictive for others. Some people are highly addictive across the entire spectrum of experiences that could be habit-forming or addictive. So the number one thing that we're all addicted to, and if you're sitting here watching saying, well, yeah, I know people with addiction, but I don't have any, I'm here to tell you that you do. The number one thing that we're all addicted to is our thoughts. We are having about 60,000 thoughts per day, and about 75% of those are negative. About 95% of those are repetitive. So when you think about thought addiction, what does this mean? Now, if you are a generally anxious person, we can become addicted to the pattern of negative thinking. What does this look like? Well, it means like it's basically impossible to stop it. And the number one thing that people notice is they feel uncomfortable being comfortable. How can this be? Well, you'll hear about it all the time if you're a therapist like me, because what happens is that people have not, I should say we've lost the capacity to learn how to be uncomfortable, to sit with silence, to not have something to do or think about or move toward or move away from. Anxiety is very often just the subconscious mind taking those repetitive negative thoughts and going over and over and over them again. And if we try to pull that drug away, if we try to pull it back, we become uncomfortable with the calm. I know it sounds strange, but you might know what I'm talking about. Now, we can think of addictive behaviors, right? We know thought addiction is a behavior, but there are other behaviors that are very addictive. This is gambling, shopping, sex, pornography, scanning the internet, and social media, even being on our phones. These behaviors that we do that are very addictive. People can get addicted to a sport or extreme sports. And this is because whenever we experience anything that we seek out in any form, and it gives us a level of gratification and reward, then it floods our internal pharmacy with the feel-good chemistry of dopamine. And dopamine is that molecule of more. It's the reward chemical. And so it primes the brain to go and seek out that thing again because it thinks we need it for our survival. Another area that you might consider interesting as far as addictive behaviors go is relationships. Maybe there's the person you know that is in love with falling in love. They go really high and big into it, and then when the relationship crashes, you see them pretty much have a big come down, and then the next thing they do is go seek out another relationship that is highly intense. The other side of this is someone who would be in a relationship with a narcissistic personality type. That person who is the narcissist is both the dealer and the drug in this situation. And I want to give credit to that statement to my colleague and friend, Ronia Fraser, who's a world-renowned specialist in narcissistic abuse, how to deal and help survivors move through it. And you know, when she said this to me, the narcissist is both the drug and the dealer, it made so much sense to me as someone who works with addiction and relationships. Because what will happen is, remember, we have to seek out to go get that thing, we get the reward, the pleasure, and then when it's taken away, there's a come down. And that's a really very common cycle in narcissistic relationships. Being really sweet and really love bombing and like giving you all the love, and then shutting down, turning off, and closing off. So think about that if you're in a relationship. Yes, we can be addicted to the process, and hypnosis can help. Now, I did a whole segment on how social media is addictive. But it's the internet in general. It is the ease of access. It's buying something instantly on Amazon. It is being able to go into a store, one of many stores that you have in your area, and be able to buy virtually whatever the fuck you want right then and there. And you don't even have to have the money for it, really, do you? You can put it on this little interesting thing called plastic that you can pay for later, or not. You know who you are. There's a hypnosis for that too. But the idea being is that there's no effort that comes from having to go and seek and find and then get the reward. It's coming too fast, too quick, too easy. And so there's not this drop time to where we get to recover. We just keep getting hit with those shots of dopamine, the reward that makes us go and seek more of the same thing. Now, it's not your fault, it's not mine. This is just the way our brains and bodies were designed for survival, to help us evolve, to help us go find the food, the mate, the shelter. But back then it was really hard, right? It took a lot of effort. Right now, you can just do any number of things like swiping left or right, or going here or there, and you just have instant gratification. And so we're all walking around in some form of addiction. So I'm going to challenge you now to think of something that, if it were not in your life, something you really, really enjoy, that sends you into a high state of arousal, of happiness, of just feeling like, yeah. And now if that thing were no longer in your life for one day, how would you feel? If it weren't in your life for a week, how would you feel? If it weren't in your life for a month, how would you feel? Or if it was no longer there at all, how would you feel? The flip side of this is that there are people who engage in behaviors that are very destructive. We don't like it. It doesn't feel good, but it's that addictive cycle of the reward to the brain that will keep us perpetuating that behavior even though it doesn't feel good. Now, I'm going to put a link below to a video that I think everyone should watch, because it is a world expert in how addiction and dopamine are tied together across the spectrum of our life, and it's going to give you so much clear, concise information on how the dopamine and the brain and the body work together. But the purpose of me talking to you today is how hypnosis can help you. So watch the video, learn how the chemical processes are taking place within the brain, and let's get to the solutions. Now, the number one way that hypnosis or hypnotherapists can help people with addiction is first for you to understand that we don't treat, diagnose, or cure it. We work as complementary alternative modalities in support of either in or outpatient treatment, or with the work of a therapist outside of treatment, what we would call an outpatient therapy. So what does this look like? Well, as hypnotists, we can teach you ways to interrupt the pattern of thought, those negative thinkings, give it a roadblock, and then send it off into a different direction. And through repetition, we can start to deconstruct those neural pathways in the brain that cause us to go toward the negative thoughts in the first place. The next thing that we can do as hypnotists is help you to address the triggers, or the cue. And an interesting thing I'm finding is that people are getting triggered by the word trigger now. Isn't that interesting? And that is because everything is a learned behavior and an association to that behavior, or an association to a word or a feeling. But it really is just the feeling that we get that comes from an internal or external event, i.e. the cue or the trigger. And hypnosis can help a person with addiction to recognize, is it the location? Is it who I'm with? Is it what I'm doing or thinking? And with this process, we can address it in such a way that we can dial back the intensity of the way the trigger causes us to go into that place where we want to use that particular drug. Hypnosis can also help us to address the trauma that may have been a source of why the person became addicted in the first place. Because yes, we can have the gene that puts us higher on the propensity to have an addiction, but it's also the real life emotional experiences and traumas that can couple with that to really make us more susceptible to addiction in the first place. So hypnosis, when you work with an ethical and trained therapist, will not have to take you back into the trauma to relive it in order to resolve it. We work with how you feel now. What are the echoes and the imprints of that trauma that you're experiencing today? And then we create a bridge to get you from where you are now to where you want to be, so that the trauma is now behind you. You know it happened, you just don't have the emotional charge behind it. Hypnosis is incredibly effective for helping people with the number one thing that can keep them in a cycle of addiction, and that is the shame and the guilt that come from having engaged in those behaviors in the first place. Because very often when we are overspending, getting into debt, when we are cheating on our partners, when we are engaging in drugs and alcohol, losing our job, when the whole shit show comes down and we lose everything, whether that happens in little increments or in a really big way, it naturally creates shame and guilt. And the shame is because other people can see us doing this. And the guilt is because we feel like we should do better and we should know better, but yet we're still hurting ourselves and others. And hypnosis is a powerful resource, a powerful tool to go in and say, let's look at this through a different lens, because there is misguided shame and guilt and there is appropriate shame and guilt. And shame and guilt are designed to teach us how not to be assholes to one another, how to be good people. But if you are in a cycle of addiction that is chemically and genetically, and let's just face it, socially, not even our faults anymore, because every single one of you have a cell phone in your hand that you would have a hard time putting down for any period of time, then a hypnotist can help you to change your relationship with shame and guilt, see what is appropriate and what is misplaced, and then move beyond. Finally, hypnosis is in and of itself a way for us to learn and understand how we came to be this way. How did we come to be the people that we are today? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the bad and the ugly are those things that we want to change, and we leverage the good to help us really come to terms and be a little kind to ourselves when we do engage in the bad or the ugly, because the truth is we're only human. So this would happen in a number of ways. There is open-eyed trance, more conversational hypnosis. There is closed-eyed trance, what people think of as the more traditional or conventional laying there with your eyes closed. There is interactive, there is passive. But it all at its core engages you to do three things: to engage your imagination while we've captured your focus and attention, and then to go into the experience and look at it from a different perspective. Some therapists, myself included, we will include other modalities such as integral eye movement therapy, which allows us to address even the way the brain is processing and holding on to and reliving and looping through the trauma that could have caused us to engage in the behavior in the first place, or that keeps the trauma in place where we're reliving it as if it's happening today, even though it happened 30 fucking years ago. So it may feel from time to time as if you can hold to opposing thoughts or feelings. You can feel anguish, but also hope. And this is true, but also it is a law of the mind that deep within we cannot hold to opposing thoughts or feelings. What's happening is that your brain and your nervous system are switching between the two very, very quickly, lightning speed. And what hypnosis can do is to interrupt that pattern. Stop. As I'm going into one, stop. And how do I back off and down-regulate and go into the more desired state? So essentially what hypnosis would do in a situation like this is to help the brain stop switching so fast, stop going at lightning speed, to slow that process down and recognize that we have control over it. Because when we have control, this is the place of self-empowerment. Yes, I feel like I'm having anguish and I'm having hope at the same time, but which one can I make a priority? How can I interrupt the pattern and go into the more desired state to down-regulate the nervous system and step into that place of control? Because you've been so kind to stick around all this time, I'm going to show you a technique that you can use right away. I'm going to invite you to put your hands out just like this. And I want you to think of a problem that you have. Just think of any problem. And as you think of this problem, put into your left hand how you feel about that problem. What the triggers are that cause you to feel this way. The emotions, the sensations. So when you think of the problem, put everything about the problem in your left hand, and then give it a symbol, a color, a texture, a quality, because the subconscious mind communicates to you through your imagination, through symbol and metaphor. So as you think about the problem, you put everything you associate to the problem, the behavior, the trigger, whatever it is, put it all there. Put the shit show right there. And whatever that is, leave it for a moment. Now think of the opposite, how you want to feel. Maybe a solution, maybe a different behavior than that over there. Maybe a complementary emotion or feeling like accomplishment, pride, calm, joy, or peace. And give the good thing, the alternate, the way you want to feel, a color, a quality, symbol, metaphor, texture. So now you have these two opposites that are connected to the same problem. This is how you've been feeling, and this is how you've been trying to feel, maybe forcing yourself to feel or want to feel. Now I invite you to just close your eyes and imagine that those two hands are slowly coming together as the palms turn together very slowly. Some of you, it might feel like you're doing it, but you're not doing it. Others feel like you're doing it, but are you doing it? It doesn't really matter. But as those two hands come together, in a moment, they're going to touch. And here's where you can call these peace hands, prayer hands, namaste hands, or whatever. But as those hands touch, I want the palms, like all of the palms, the whole hand, everything, one to touch the other. And now you're going to think about the problem again. But notice that you notice something is slightly different. Or is it significantly different? Notice. And then come back to the present moment. This confuses the brain. The brain says, I don't know which one to go to. Okay? Wait, what? And then when we think about the problem, that can help collapse the old and give you the space to move into the new. Doesn't that feel different? It has to feel different in some way, even if it's just a bit. And if you can do it just a bit, you can practice this, and through repetition, you can train the brain to feel it a bit more. Now, if you are struggling with addiction in any way, I really want you to be kind to yourself. You learned how to be this way from either your family of origin or life experiences combined with genetics, and the fact that the whole world is full of pleasure in some form that's just too easy to get to. And if I could invite you, or maybe even challenge you, to consider that someone does love you, even if that someone is you, that part of you is still there. And hypnosis can help reconnect you to this part of you. But in the meantime, just know that the very fact that you are here watching this and hearing this, that you stayed to listen to all of this, is all the proof you need that you are resilient, resourceful, adaptable, and that you can create a space for change. That's it for today on the G-Spot. I trust you found this information informative, helpful, and inspiring. And if you think it could help someone else, please like, subscribe, and share with other people. So until next time on the G-Spot, be well, be happy, and just get out there, get to it.